I am going to who did they vote for to the mother ground. Like any scenario, my family will tell me like good news about a person we know. Like they got their dream job, they're getting married, they're having a child. But who did they vote for before I decide I'm happy for them and I'm gonna congratulate them?
And none of this dumb would be happening if y'all just voted for Kamala.
Who said that? I said that. It was me.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to ONC. My name is Bella Carolyn, and I am a social media intern talking here with Masie. She is our Chief Content Officer. Today, we are going to be discussing toxic commentary on voters in America, surrounding people who regret their vote, don't regret their vote, and how it impacts the way we are communicating with each other. Today is August 11th. Masie, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Great. So, regarding our topic for today, I know we have seen a lot of discourse online, mainly TikTok, X, Instagram, people sort of demonizing each other in the comment section, in videos. What are some things you have seen out in the wild online?
Out in the wild. You're so funny. Yeah, honestly, just like scrolling on TikTok or Instagram, like there were just so many videos just about people basically calling MAGA supporters idiots, or basically like any voter at all who is appalled at any of his recent actions or shocked at anything he's done lately. It's almost impossible for these voters to express dismay or like any sort of discomfort with his actions without being called like an idiot or like saying that I told you so, or there's no sort of understanding or middle ground being shown by a lot of people. So online, it just really is like a game of like, I guess, how can you express your honest opinion without being demonized? Um, so yeah, it's kind of crazy out there. Like the algorithm, I honestly like kind of listen to a lot of like left media, right media, and the middle, and follow, accounts across the political. So I feel like TikTok and Instagram are kind of confused on what content to show me, so they just show me everything. And yeah, it's really crazy to see people just like even though they are starting to agree with people on the left does not accept them because they're just, labeling them as idiots, even though a lot of different people voted for this time around. So it's kind of disheartening, I guess, to see that the open-minded isn't so open-minded.
Yeah, I think that's totally valid. Would you say that you have seen maybe a disproportionate amount of content leaning towards criticizing the right or conservative types, or do you think that there has been an equal amount of, uh, returning back what people are being thrown at them, like people on the right? Would you say you've seen a lot of content lashing back, saying that they are doubling down on their decision or anything of that sort?
I have only seen a couple of commentators talk about how they're doubling down on their decision to vote, if that's what you mean. But honestly, I feel like the
Yeah.
algorithm really just generally promotes content that is really toxic or negative, um, because that's just the easiest thing to talk about, right? So, like, if you find content that you sort of connect with that's negative, it's really easy to leave a negative comment and then boost that engagement for that post and make it go viral. So I guess a lot of like the content I've seen is negative, but I'm not sure if it's the majority or if it's just being boosted by the algorithm.
Sure. And that kind of makes sense, right? I know it's like a common psychological adage that people that leave bad reviews most often overtake people that leave good reviews, you know?
Hmm.
And I think
For
that
sure.
sort of translates to the online sphere. Engagement really favors rage, outrage posts, and triggering content. And from my experience, I have seen what you're describing. I have seen people on the left being very accusative, derogatory, and sort of like wanting to persecute verbally or otherwise people that have made a quote wrong decision in their mind to commit to a vote. these are being met, from what I've seen, with equally enraged videos of people saying that they're all for this, all for that. There's been a lot of discourse around, like, alligator Alcatraz and a lot of very inflammatory type topics. Part of me is wondering how much is vocal minority and how much is legitimate popular discourse among voters, if they're not just letting their most maybe extreme emotions being loudspeakered through the voices of people who are willing to say this stuff online. And that's something I'm always suspicious about personally with politics or any other type of, moral, ethical online discourse, right? It's like the moderate opinions are not going to be favored. They're not really going to be touted as anything newsworthy, rather. So, what do you think about getting a pulse on the crowd that doesn't have these sort of polarizing extremes in their viewpoints? Do you think that there is space to be had for that online? And what do you think would be the best way to sort of encourage those people to share their mindsets with each other?
Yeah, so, I really do think there is space online for people who don't really agree with either side. I actually think that's like a growing thing with both political parties, is that they're starting to realize that it's not just one party that's corrupt, it's an entire government that's corrupt. And I think there is space for that online, but people are really scared to show their opinion because they believe that if you voted for a Democrat, you always have to vote for a Democrat. Or if you voted for a Republican, you always have to vote for a Republican. And likewise, people believe they're under the misconception that if you voted for a Democrat, you agree with 100% of what the person campaigned for, what they were talking about. It's the same thing with how Democrats view MAGA supporters. Like, they think that every voter agrees 100% with what he is doing and what he campaigned for, when in reality, voters weren't really given a choice. I've seen some posts that were kind of like, it'll say something that Trump is doing right now that Trump voters don't agree with, like the alligator Alcatraz, or like his deployment of the National Guard, or one huge looming thing right now is his reaction to the Epstein files release and his behavior towards Ghislaine Maxwell if she gave up 100 names or something. So a lot of supporters and voters in general are voicing their not just dismay, but outright disapproval. And it's shown in his approval rating right now, actually. Like, it just went down 2 points since the lowest it's ever been at 47%. I think the majority of people don't agree with either side. I think they actually want this middle ground, but it's some sort of witch hunt is being perpetuated on both sides. It's like, if you're a Democrat and you find out one of your friends is a Trump supporter, you have to write them out of your life immediately, or else you're going to look bad, or like your life is going to get toxic and your life is going to get contaminated with Trump supporter rhetoric, and vice versa. I mean, strong extreme people on the right also don't want anything to do with Democrats, and that's like the reality that we're seeing right now. That is, I think, the loud minority. But I do feel like, going back to what I was saying before, like, I really do feel like the majority of people don't like either party, either extreme, and they want something more in the middle. They just can't express their opinion because they're just going to get crucified online for it. I've seen posts that are like, people will post about something Trump is doing, and something shocking, because he's been doing a lot of shocking things in the news lately, and then somebody will comment, but Kamala had a weird laugh, which sort of like is a blanket statement over people who didn't vote for Kamala, because Kamala really didn't have a lot of plans for the country. I mean, it was sort of like, vote for somebody who's, corrupt, but less, I guess, offensive, or vote for somebody who is offensive, but will be able to lead the country and make us back into that image of America that they want. So I feel like that's what a lot of people were faced with. And now, if you didn't vote for Kamala, you're seen as like a Nazi, basically. So that's the loud minority that we're hearing on the internet right now. But really, I believe the majority of people see that both sides are not really the solution. Like, we need to find some middle ground here. Sorry, that was like kind of a lot.
Oh, no, that's okay. We love that. No, I totally hear what you're saying. And something that's popping out to me as a listener to what you're saying is there's a lot of these words being thrown around right now, like authoritarian, Nazi, and sort of the antithesis to, what is the antithesis of a Nazi? Well, I guess it's leftism. Is it? I don't know. It doesn't seem like that should be the natural antithesis when I'm looking at this ideological viewpoint, right? When you consider what conservatives were defined as, maybe a couple of elections back, or even to maybe like the Bush administration and prior, I don't think these terms would be ascribed to those candidates or to people who aligned with that party or their values. Now, granted, there have always been generalized values attributed to either side, maybe more religious, more socially conservative on the right, more socially liberal on the left. Do you think in today's climate of very individuated viewpoints of oneself, echo chambers online, do you think that parties are having to become more prescriptive in saying, oh, we believe in this, and this. We support church, family, and state, versus we support, the homeless and anti-war and this, to get the attention of people that are sort of locked into these online echo chambers, since that's where most of our discourse is happening. We're not really having too many publics for the younger people to have conversations, and we're not watching a lot of cable TV. People aren't really subscribing to news networks so much as they're subscribing to social circles online. So are we seeing a shift in the way that parties are trying to appeal to people, having to go to these more extremes, having to claim these identities in order to get voters, basically? And could that possibly be why we're seeing such polarization and such extremism in their identities in the first place? At least that's something I wonder, because I don't remember growing up seeing this type of very extreme alignment one way or the other, or such complete, I don't even know how to put it, because it seems like it's like you said, there is no space for a moderate anymore. You're just looked at as non-committal or part of the problem if you don't go left or you don't go right. I think when it relates to that, it's a little bit strange to also see alongside that the habit and want to chastise people who are now regretting their vote. These are people who are evaluating their choices. They are changing their frame of mind. They are considering other points of view, and maybe considering, maybe I've done something wrong, or maybe let me reevaluate my personal values, what's important to me, seeing how it affects other people. And yet that is what's being held up on, and people are like, oh, look at you, you're stupid, you've done this is your fault, instead of being empathetic to each other and understanding. And I think maybe there's just no room for that, because so many people are so deadlocked in this, well, I believe in this, and this, so I must be right. I believe in this, and this, so I must be left. And like you said, if you don't, then I don't have space for you in my life. I'm not going to talk to you. I'm not going to work with you. Sorry, that turned into more of an exposition than a question.
No, I appreciate it. And I know exactly what you're trying to say too. I don't remember this political climate growing up either. I mean, we're both similar in age, so I'm sure we had similar upbringings, just with our view, our worldview, the media. And you're right, nobody's really watching the news anymore. No, they're all falling to TikTok and Instagram and X. And there was a recent study that was 60% of X users are there for. So I think really what's going on is we're being pitted against each other and being told that we can't associate with each other if we're in different political parties. And people are saying that it's not politics anymore. It's about whether you're a good or bad person, which if we look back to past elections, before the 2000s, I would say people mostly voted practically with the ways that would affect them personally, that affect their own households. And now people are voting for how things will affect other people, which I'm not saying is a good or bad thing. I'm just saying that we're seeing a shift in how people are voting, especially with like the last, I would say, 3 or 4 elections. It's been very apparent. So yeah, I mean, people are just being pitted against each other in the media. Like the media is kind of the first thing that I noticed. I mean, even as an adolescent, I noticed that the media had become increasingly biased. And it was just sort of, with the bias, they lose their credibility. So now people don't really have a news source to look up to. They have these social media platforms with viral videos that may or may not be true, but it's compelling information and it's more information than they're getting from the news. So really, we're being pitted against each other when really we should be looking at the sources that aren't giving us honest information. I feel like really it's just we're fighting for a source of honesty, and we're not being given that. The government isn't giving it to us, the media isn't giving it to us, so we're becoming more and more polarized. And I'm not an expert on this at all. I mean, I'm just a 20 something year old, just looking at the world. But we're not given this honesty. And so people are just fighting each other and fighting for this honesty. And I mean, we're seeing it now where we're eating each other for voting for one of 2 political parties, and the majority voted for one of the political parties. But the other side is still crucifying them. And the reality is that the people who voted thought that they would get someone who served America more than they serve Israel or other foreign nations, and they didn't. And it ultimately was a bait and switch, like we were talking about earlier. Like, he did tell these people that he would try to get them out of foreign wars and conflicts, that he wouldn't touch people who were here legally, and we've seen several deportations of legal immigrants, that he even promised he would release the Epstein files, which then turned into and where he pitted himself against the people who voted for him and said just basically that they're dumb for wanting this, or like, because people want this so bad, I've tried to appeal to get the Epstein files released. And it's like, I think I even saw a tweet where he said that he like didn't need his followers who want him to release the Epstein files. And I'm like, yeah, you kind of do, because they voted for you. So I think, like, all in all, we are just so hungry for honesty in our government, and our sort of like alienization and, like, I don't know, anger is misdirected at each other instead of at the powers that are really orchestrating this whole thing. So I don't know if that like sounds, crazy or whatever. It might sound crazy to some people, but it makes sense to me because that's what I'm seeing. So I do think there is a place for moderate news and honest news. I think people just need to find it. I mean, we have channels like, there are some like political commentators who are on neither side of the political. They kind of just want the truth. I think that's really what we need.
I think you make excellent points with mentioning, and just want to reiterate for our listeners that this is not a conversation, though we are talking about, we are not focusing on whether he is fulfilling campaign promises to the best of his ability, the intent in what he's doing. More or less, we are just encircling the way in which people are reacting to, changing minds, changing perspectives, right? I think if this were to have been anybody, and a lot of people were mad, to give a different example, like talk about Obama and the Patriot Act. I know it's like a big thing with people being really upset about him not banishing that or eliminating civil liberties for Americans via that act. And I feel like every person in government has their moment, like their oh oops thing. But I think what we're seeing right now is people, the public rather, I think it's symptomatic of a larger problem, right? Because we're in a nonstop news cycle where people are constantly fed everything every day, 24 hours a day, where we're seeing everybody's mistake, everybody's misstep, every speech they make, there's some snippet or thing taken out of context or whatever and made into like an inflammatory moment, right? And that will float around for maybe like 12 hours, 72 hours before we move on to the next thing. And with all this supposed like evidence about people's behavior. I think we're holding each other accountable to keeping like a track record, almost like a very diligent checklist of like, what has this person done wrong? Like, don't you remember this? Don't you remember this? Don't you remember this? And it's
Yeah.
like sort of like a rinse and repeat, especially if there's a lot, there's like a running, I'm sure someone has like a running Excel sheet of all the things done wrong somewhere. And I think when people start measuring these things up and the scale starts to tip, just to be on the other side, they might go, hey, like, he has done so much. Why are you still supporting him on X, Y, and Z? Which could be a valid point. When you start seeing evidence that points toward a behavior, you kind of anticipate that the behavior is going to continue, especially when they keep doing it, right? So, like, do you think that voters are actually in a place where going through this is now his second term? Do you think that they should have seen this coming? Or do you think that this is like a wild departure from who he may have been as a candidate before? Was there any way for people to look back and go, this could happen again, or this might get worse?
Yeah, no, I really think you're on a presidential campaign, you make a lot of promises and you say a lot of things, right? And it's like that for both sides. I don't think he has deviated much from past Republican presidential campaigns that I've seen. I've remained pretty politically diligent throughout my entire life. I mean, my mom would make us like memorize the cabinet members when we were, I don't know, like 6. So that's probably not a good thing, but yeah, no, I've been pretty like politically diligent. And I don't think his like rhetoric during his campaign has like deviated much from past political campaigns. And I mean, Obama was also a pretty rash president, and people don't really talk much about that. I mean, I think they used to call him like the deporter in chief. He deported way more immigrants than has so far. He bombed so many people in Iran. So I don't think it's a matter of like, should they feel like they were tricked? I think they should feel like they were tricked, because there were promises that made on his campaign that he has like blatantly won against. I mean, he bombed Iran. He won't release the Epstein files, even though like I think it was on Theo Vaughn's podcast, JD Vance was talking about releasing the files. He was like, "Oh yeah, we got to release those." And they were talking about that. And now they're like, "Oh, shoot. Now that they actually want to release the files, we have to do it." But it's not even just about Trump, it's about like how probably everybody in government is like connected somehow. I mean, I was watching this video and there's like not a lot of people up at that level that are more than 1 degree connected to Epstein. So it's a lot of people try to center it around, but it's not even all about, it's just about everybody, you know? Okay, I was just gonna say, it's like it's a bigger problem than a lot of people think. Like, it's not centered around one person. I mean, the president doesn't actually have that much power. There are broader strokes that we could be making, but I think a lot of people are focusing on when it's bigger than that. But yeah, no, I really want to hear what you have to say though.
So yeah, I was just going to pretty much iterate off your point with this is a much bigger issue. More so, it's almost like an issue of like elitism in a way, right? Versus like pluralism. And I think part of what we're seeing now is kind of symptomatic of people not really having, or at least feeling like they don't have, a proper influence on their government. And I almost feel that our reliance on, special interest groups as people, we kind of need to have these groups to represent us and have any type of power when it comes to the government and making decisions and having influence. And a lot of the times these interest groups come with ideology. And I think maybe that is why it's become so tempting to kind of align one way or the other, be so extreme or not extreme. People have power in groups, and groups don't all think the same thing for the same reason. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing here, is like much with voters, or much like with a cause or a moral way of thinking, or with ethics, you have people that subscribe to the same belief, but they might not have the same motivation for the belief. right?
Definitely.
So we have voters that who, they may feel really sideways right now because they voted and they wanted, X, Y, and Z, not necessarily A, B, and C, but the people who wanted A, B, and C are really, really happy right now. And I think that's natural, and that's not really going to go away. You're always going to see people coming out of the woodwork who you're under the same with them and they're
Hmm.
not, one person's just not going to have the same opinion as you. So this has always existed, but I think it's just been put under such a microscope for one reason or another, whether that's to simply detract and distract or just the inevitable outcome of people raging because they don't feel like they have a sense of control or power. Who's to say? I think there's a lot of conversation in that area that we could be having with each other. And there's a social aspect that's missing from our politics that is not really affording people the space to be moderate or share ideas or come to, middle ground consensus on ideas. And I really would like to try and turn the focus of the conversation from this point is how do we get there? What does that look like in our society now in a space where most of our discourse is happening online in these conversational bubbles, echo chambers? And so how do we build that kind of environment where people can have civil conversation and maybe mediate with each other a little bit better and create empathy with each other, realizing that we're all subject to the same systems and wills of things we may or may not be able to control? How do we get that sense of control back as individuals and as voters?
I honestly, I think that people look at moderates and media like we're making right now on this podcast, like we're like hippies or something, like, oh, they're all peace and love and they're delusional and blah, blah, blah. But that's honestly, I think, where it starts. I mean, just having these conversations and being open and being kind to one another. Just remember that, like, there's not a single person, unless they have some deeply ingrained issues, there's not a single person that votes for someone because they know that they're the wrong person. I'm like, just to expand on that, like, there's not a single person who makes the decisions that they do because they think they're wrong on purpose. Like, everybody has a reason, like you were saying, for what they're voting for and what they're doing and how they're raising their kids and how they're living. And I think we all need to realize that. We all need to, like, kind of, we need to have like a come to Jesus moment with ourselves, like not in like a religious aspect, but like realize we're kind of calling the pot calling the kettle black. We need to have more conversations like these. I mean, I kind of have started in my workplace, just kind of being honest with the state of the political climate and what people are doing well, what people are doing, not so good. And a lot of my coworkers, honestly, who I've been talking to, I thought that they voted one way and they voted another way. Or we've been finding things out about each other and just having like these really honest conversations, and it's felt really good. It honestly has restored like a lot of my faith that like we can look past these labels and actually just like come back together and realize that America is actually for the people. If it feels like it's not our problem. It's the government's problem. And there's a reason why we have the Bill of Rights and, the Constitution and everything. And I feel like there's a lot of like misguided anger towards each other because of the political labels that we have. But I need to remind people we literally have two. And like, no, but the reality is nobody's gonna like fall into the exact category. Everybody's placed along, and you have to kind of remember that we're all human beings and we're all like just trying to make it work, you know? And we can only do our best. That's just the reality of it. And hence we also have the ability to change our minds and to fluctuate in our beliefs. I mean, Sinead O'Connor, who's like a really famous musician who unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago, she went through like, gosh, so many changes in identity, like so many changes in religion and political aspects, and just so it's just like apparent that people have the ability to change, and that's just something that we all need to realize. We all need to embrace each other and stop pushing each other away for our labels that may or may not fully encompass what we believe. So it all starts with these conversations and like seeing media where people of opposing political parties can't like sit down and have a conversation.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I love what you said about having this discourse with your coworkers and finding out their motivations and what is the why behind their decision. Because it's not
Hmm.
just about the decision at face value, right? It's about and behind the decision, the factors behind the decision. We had a great conversation in our last podcast with someone whose parents had to make the decision to cross the border, and there was a lot of back and forth about whether that was okay or not okay because of what's legal and what's on paper. But we have to remember that there's always factors involved with these decisions, and that it's not just so black and white. Life is most often gray. And I think having some like a level of empathy could do a lot in having these discussions with our friends, loved ones, acquaintances, people that you meet on the street. It's something that makes our country great is that we have the freedom of speech and we can exercise it. And I think we'd be doing a great disservice to not exercise it with each other and give each other that space to, feel like, maybe you're going to feel like you're completely wrong, I'm completely wrong. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because we all have the ability to say it. And I think that's fantastic. And I think the more that we exercise it, it's like your body. The more you exercise that muscle, the more used to it you're going to get. You're not going to be on
Hmm.
the 5-pound weights forever, and you're not going to be intolerant to other ideas forever if you keep seeking them out. So I
Right.
think, just doing your due diligence, doing your civic duty, just talking to others, trying to be informed, making those challenging inquiries to
Yeah.
people that you know and care about and love are going to be vital steps in the right direction for opening discourse on a day to day. And hopefully that will
Hmm.
spill over into our online spheres of influence.
Right. But that's a good analogy about like lifting and kind of getting that muscle in the works. And I think, politics can be really depressing. It can be really anxiety inducing. I mean, if you doom scroll long enough, like you'll start to just feel awful. So it's important to kind of like manage your political literacy in the amount of content that you're getting, of course. And just, I mean, like you were talking about, like you can't just like step up to the big dog weights and start lifting those when you're just lifting the bar. So, I mean, honestly, just getting to know each other as people and just like talk to people in your sphere. Like, I mean, get to know them. Like, what is their family like? What do they like to do? How were they raised? Like, what really do they stand for? And then I guess you might be able to have political conversations. I don't know, but really, politics is not everything. Like more often than not, we have common threads among each other. And I think a lot of people think just because your political label doesn't match, that negates all of the common threads that we see with each other. But it's honestly, it's so beautiful. I mean, we agree on a lot of things. Like a lot of us have traditions, a lot of us have books that we like, or we like in the movies when there's a resolution at the end. Like even simple things like this, we feel. So even getting to know like those simple aspects of each other can be a really good thing. And you don't need to like jump in the deep end of politics all the time. You can just talk to each other.
I think that's a fantastic way to close here. Maisie, it was a wonderful conversation we've had, I think. Do you
Me
have any
too.
final thoughts for our topic today?
I really don't, but I used to think, I guess as a final thought, I do have a final thought. Just kidding. I used to think that there was like pretty much no hope in us coming together. But just like looking in, I think it was ABC News. I'm not sure. I'll have to like link the article somewhere. But there was an article talking about like these common threads, and that really like put it into perspective that we're all not so different. And it kind of gave me a little hope. And the more I think about it, the more I realize that we do have common threads. I mean, we literally have trends for a reason, which is another conversation to have. But yeah, I guess just don't lose hope. I think we can really come together.
Amazing. Well, guys, this has been our national conversation, ONC. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and listen on Spotify for our podcast. Maisie, did I miss any platforms?
I think we have a Facebook. We might have Apple Podcasts. I don't know. But yeah. Yeah. No, this has been really, really great. So thank you.
Thank you guys so much. Join us next time for our next podcast, and we will see you later. What's legal and what's on paper. But we have to remember that there's always factors involved with these decisions, and that's not just so black and white. Life is most often gray. And I think having some like a level of empathy could do a lot in having these discussions with our friends, loved ones, acquaintances, people that you meet on the street. You know, it's something that makes our country great is that we have the freedom of speech and we can exercise it. And I think we'd be doing a great disservice to not exercise it with each other and give each other that space to, you know, feel like, you know, maybe you're going to feel like you're completely wrong, I'm completely wrong. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because we all have the ability to say it. And I think that's fantastic. And I think the more that we exercise it, it's like your body. The more you exercise that muscle, the more used to it you're going to get. You're not going to be on the 5-pound weights forever, and you're not going to be intolerant to other ideas forever if you keep seeking them out. So
Right.
I think, you know, just doing your due diligence, doing your civic duty, just talking to others, trying to be informed, making those challenging inquiries to
Yeah.
people that you know and care about and love are going to be vital steps in the right direction for opening discourse on a day-to-day. And hopefully that will spill over into our online spheres of influence.
Right. And that's a good analogy about like lifting and kind of getting that muscle in the works. And I think, you know, politics can be really depressing. It can be really anxiety inducing. I mean, if you doom scroll long enough, like you'll start to just feel awful. So it's important to kind of like manage your political literacy in the amount of content that you're getting, of course. And just, I mean, like you were talking about, like you can't just like step up to the big dog weights and start lifting those when you're just lifting the bar. So, I mean, honestly, just getting to know each other as people and just like talk to people in your sphere. Like, I mean, get to know them. Like, what is their family like? What do they like to do? How were they raised? Like, what really do they stand for? And then I guess you might be able to have political conversations. I don't know, but really, politics is not everything. Like more often than not, we have common threads among each other. And I think a lot of people think just because your political label doesn't match, that negates all of the common threads that we see with each other. But honestly, it's so beautiful. I mean, we agree on a lot of things. Like a lot of us have traditions, a lot of us have books that we like, or you know, we like in the movies when there's a resolution at the end. Like even simple things like this, we feel. So even getting to know like those simple aspects of each other can be a really good thing. And you don't need to like jump in the deep end of politics all the time. You can just talk to each other.
I think that's a fantastic way to close here. Maisie, it was a wonderful conversation we've had, I think. Do you
Me
have any
too.
final thoughts for our topic today?
I really don't, but you know, I used to think, I guess as a final thought, I do have a final thought. Just kidding. I used to think that there was like pretty much no hope in us coming together. But just like looking in, I think it was ABC News. I'm not sure. I'll have to like link the article somewhere. But there was an article talking about like these common threads, and that really like put it into perspective that we're all not so different, you know? And it kind of gave me a little hope. And the more I think about it, the more I realize that we do have common threads. I mean, we have literally have trends for a reason, which is another conversation to have. But yeah, I guess just don't lose hope. I think we can really come together.
Amazing. Well, guys, this has been our national conversation, ONC. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and listen on Spotify for our podcast. Maisie, did I miss any platforms?
I think we have a Facebook. We might have Apple Podcasts. I don't know. But yeah. Yeah. No, this has been really, really great. So thank you.
Thank you guys so much. Join us next time for our next podcast, and we will see you later.